You think you know the INTP? You've read the memes? The lazy genius? The guy who forgets to eat because he was too busy arguing with himself about whether free will actually exists? The walking Wikipedia article that can't make eye contact? I think that description is one of the most embarrassing oversimplifications the internet has ever produced. Because what nobody tells you, what every generic personality breakdown completely glosses over, is that there exists a version of the INTP that operates on a completely different frequency. Not louder, not more social, not more productive by your definition, just different in a way that genuinely unsettles people once they figure out what they're actually dealing with. You know what I'm talking about. You've felt it your entire life, that quiet awareness that you're running a completely different operating system than the people around you, and nobody handed you the manual. Today, we're not doing the watered-down version. We're going deep, the real stuff. The traits that make Sigma INTPs fascinating, frightening, and fundamentally misread by almost everyone who encounters them. And I'll warn you right now, if you find yourself agreeing with things you've never said out loud to another human being, that's not a coincidence. Let's start with the trait that confuses people the most. Sigma INTPs are constantly mistaken for the least ambitious people in any room. And I think that misread might be the most expensive mistake their coworkers, teachers, and family members have ever made. Here's what's actually happening. While everyone else is loudly hustling, posting progress updates, setting public goals, performing ambition for an audience, the Sigma INTP has already run 17 mental simulations of the problem, identified the 3 approaches everyone else will waste months trying, and is currently sitting in what looks like complete stillness. From the outside, disengaged, unbothered, maybe a little dead inside. From the inside, the engine is screaming. You don't need external deadlines to create urgency. You manufacture your own internal pressure systems, and when they finally ignite, what comes out is not what people expected from someone who looked like they weren't paying attention. That's the first thing everyone gets wrong. Now, here's where it gets darker. Sigma INTPs have a relationship with other people that most personality descriptions either romanticize or completely misunderstand. You care, but not in ways that are comfortable or convenient. You don't care about someone's feelings in the moment. You care about the actual truth of their situation, and sometimes those two things are violently opposed. You know that feeling someone comes to you with a problem, clearly looking for sympathy, and your brain has already involuntarily diagnosed exactly why they keep ending up in the same situation. And you're sitting there doing the math on whether saying the true thing will help them or just detonate the conversation. Most of the time, you say nothing, not because you're cold, because you've already calculated that they're not actually asking for honesty, they're asking for agreement. And you refuse to perform agreement you don't feel. That's not emotional unavailability. That's a level of integrity that most people are built for. But here's the question nobody asks: what happens when a Sigma INTP actually decides you're worth being honest with? That moment, when they stop filtering, when they look at you and just say exactly what they see, is one of the most disorienting experiences another person can have. Because suddenly every social cushion is gone, every polite fiction dissolves, and you're left looking at yourself through a lens that has zero interest in making you feel comfortable. Some people call that brutal. I call it rare. Let's talk about the thing that makes Sigma INTPs genuinely dangerous in any intellectual environment. They don't win arguments by being louder. They don't win by being more confident. They win by waiting. While the confident, articulate, socially dominant person in the room is performing certainty, the Sigma INTP has been quietly identifying the 3 assumptions buried inside their argument that haven't been examined. And when the moment is right, not dramatic, not theatrical, just precise, they ask one question. One quiet, completely calm question, and the entire structure collapses. You don't need to raise your voice when you've already found the load-bearing wall. This is why authority figures have always had a complicated relationship with you. It was never about rebellion. You actually have no interest in rebellion for its own sake. That's performative, and you find performatives exhausting. It's that you instinctively, almost automatically, evaluate whether the person holding the title actually deserves the authority the title implies. And more often than not, the answer makes you very quiet in a very specific way that people in power find deeply uncomfortable. I think the most misunderstood thing about the Sigma INTP is their version of loyalty. People assume, because you're detached and selective, that you're not capable of deep connection. That's completely backwards. Truth is that your standard for who gets real access to you is so high that most people never clear it, and they experience that as coldness. What's actually happening is the opposite of coldness. It's an almost irrational level of care about not wasting the connection on something that won't hold weight. When a Sigma INTP actually decides someone matters to them, that person gets something almost no one else on Earth gets: unfiltered, unperformed, completely genuine engagement. No social theater, no talking to manage impressions, just the actual you. Most people go their entire lives never offering that to anyone. You just have a very specific criteria for who earns it, and the loneliness that sometimes comes with it, you know it well, isn't a flaw in the system. It's the price of refusing to fill your life with connections that feel hollow. Here's a trait that nobody writes about because it doesn't fit the lazy genius narrative. Sigma INTPs have an almost violent internal reaction to wasted potential, not other people's potential, your own. There is a version of yourself that exists in your head, a fully realized, actually executing version, and the gap between that person and your current daily reality creates a specific kind of internal pressure that doesn't look like motivation from the outside. It looks like dissatisfaction. Sometimes it looks like self-destruction. But it's actually a standard, a completely uncompromising internal standard that you cannot negotiate with, cannot rationalize away, and cannot silence, no matter how many times well-meaning people tell you to be kinder to yourself. You're not your worst critic because you hate yourself. You're your worst critic because you can see exactly what you're capable of, and anything less than that feels like a lie you're telling with your life. That's not dysfunction, that's the engine, and the engine never actually turns off. Now let's address the thing people say most often about Sigma INTPs and get most catastrophically wrong. You're too in your head. You know what I think? I think the people who say that are terrified of what happens when someone actually examines things, actually follows a thought to its uncomfortable conclusion instead of stopping at the polite version. The world runs on comfortable half-thoughts, on conclusions that feel good but haven't been pressure tested, on certainties that dissolve the moment someone calm and genuinely curious starts pulling at the thread. Sigma INTPs pull the thread, every single time, not to be difficult. Because leaving the thread hanging feels like a personal insult to your own mind. And most environments, most jobs, most relationships, most social circles are not built for someone who cannot by nature pretend a bad idea is fine. The last thing, the thing that actually ties all of this together. Sigma INTPs exist in a permanent low-grade state of feeling slightly out of place, not in a tragic way, but in the way of someone who keeps showing up to a party where they understand exactly what's happening, find it fascinating to observe, but never fully feel like a participant. You watch the social dynamics like a researcher. You clock the unspoken hierarchies, the performance anxiety, the way people talk to seem a certain way rather than to actually say anything. And you find all of it genuinely interesting and genuinely exhausting. Because you can see the mechanics of it, you can see the whole system. And once you can see the system, participating in it sincerely becomes almost impossible. That's not a curse, that's clarity, uncomfortable, isolating, completely irreversible clarity. And here's what I actually believe. The world doesn't know what to do with people who think at this frequency. It never has. But that has never once been an argument against the frequency itself. You don't need to be understood by everyone. You need to be understood by the right ones. And the fact that you're still here, still pulling threads, still refusing to pretend, that is not your problem. That is your most precise, most quietly devastating, most completely unignorable strength. Tell me in the comments which one of these hit you somewhere you didn't expect.